Okay, so we know that the Genesis planet was formed presumably out of particles, harvested from the special Mutara Nebula. For those who know Star Trek, and actually, kind of a tiny fraction, came from the USS Reliant and the Augment people on board. So this is all kind of held together by kind of unstable elements, right? So planets came together, this one planet, the Genesis planet. But by going by the pitch video created by the scientists, Genesis was never meant to be used kind of in space as a weapon, really. It was meant to be used to kind of reconfigure already existing planets, not to create new ones, mind you, not to be used as a weapon. Now, David in Star Trek says that Genesis doesn't work, but one explanation is, he's really trying to convince the Klingons kind of not to care about the Genesis project. Or one of the other explanations is that he's ashamed of having used the proto-matter in the process. How does this all link to STFC? Well, I'm going to kind of explain to you in a minute. But what is proto-matter, you ask? Proto-matter is kind of a very highly unstable compound which kind of causes kind of mutations in plants and animals. So, it creates a regenerative effect. And this is kind of what happened to Spock in The Wrath of Khan. Okay, so given that, we see the Genesis cave in The Wrath of Khan kind of sustaining life for months, even longer, before Kirk or McCoy even showed up in The Wrath of Khan. So we can kind of contemplate here, that the technology actually works. This Genesis technology actually works. It's kind of been enhanced to kind of be used like a torpedo on a planet. Kind of interesting in a way. But how is it more difficult to kind of create these new planets out of a nebula rather than to modify an existing planet like the ones we see in Star Trek? I mean, this is a question which is definitely on a lot of people's minds, and for sure, it is definitely something which I think, I would potentially love to see, the Genesis Project missions kind of appear in Star Trek Fleet Command. Actually, I think it'd be relatively easier for the developers to do. I mean, plus, what about a kind of new expansion where, an expansion where in the Kelvin universe that we see the possibly, the augments, the augment faction right here, kind of taking control of the Genesis project. It would cause absolute chaos. The events that follow in Star Trek Fleet Command could follow this storyline, and the developers, the storyline, could reward those who have invested in the Augment faction. So that would be something which could be implemented in Star Trek Fleet Command, a kind of Genesis workaround. I mean, again, this seems to be in the Augment's remit, in Khan's remit. For example, I mean, do you remember the conversation between Saavik and David Marcus in Star Trek? Saavik goes on to question Marcus's logic. He kind of says, how could you do this when every ethical scientist has denounced the use of protomatter as dangerously unstable? David Marcus answers, it was the only way to solve certain problems. Wow, just wow. This is a complete Augment response in a way. This is something that the Khan would say, a complete Khan response. Something that the Star Trek Fleet Command developers could really use. I could really see them doing this. And just a side note, I really need to improve my augment reputation for sure. Working on Federation, Klingon, and of course Romulan right now. So grinding away. Anyway, that is my 10 cents for today. Anyway, guys, don't forget to, of course, stay safe during the COVID-19 crisis. All right, stay safe, everyone. See ya.